They drain your energy, twist your words, and make you doubt yourself. But what if you could outsmart toxic people not by fighting them, but by setting unbreakable psychological boundaries? In this video, inspired by the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, we'll uncover 7 powerful boundaries that protect your peace, sharpen your mind, and put you back in control, no matter how toxic the world around you becomes. When you encounter toxic people, the first instinct for most is to react, to argue, to defend, to justify. Yet in that very moment of reaction, you hand them precisely what they seek: power over your state of mind. Toxicity thrives on your emotional fuel. Without it, it withers. This is why detachment, learning to master your emotional response, is not merely a coping mechanism, but the highest form of psychological strength. Detachment does not mean indifference or coldness. It means that your inner state is no longer hostage to the chaos of others. The Stoics taught that the only true possession you have is mastery over your own mind. You cannot control the tongue of a gossip, the bitterness of a critic, or the jealousy of a rival, but you can control whether their poison is absorbed or rejected. Detachment begins the moment you recognize that someone's words are not a mirror of your worth, but a reflection of their inner disorder. Their anger, their manipulation, their negativity, it belongs to them, not you. To take it personally is to pick up what was never yours to carry. Think of life as a battlefield of energies. The toxic person throws arrows, hoping you will step into range. If you rush forward with anger or defensiveness, you've already lost. But if you remain still, calm, detached, the arrows fall harmlessly to the ground. They cannot touch you because you have chosen not to play their game. This is the essence of emotional mastery, not allowing external storms to dictate your inner climate. Detachment requires training. It is not achieved in one day, but cultivated through repeated practice of self-awareness. When insulted, pause before reacting. Breathe. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want? Will engaging serve me or serve them? Most often, silence is more powerful than speech, and stillness stronger than counterattack. Your detachment strips them of leverage, leaving them wrestling with their own emptiness. You, on the other hand, remain unshaken. It is important to note that detachment is not passivity. It does not mean tolerating abuse or accepting mistreatment. On the contrary, detachment gives you clarity. It allows you to see manipulation for what it is without becoming entangled in its web. From that clarity comes decisive action. Whether that means setting boundaries, walking away, or calmly stating your terms without emotional weight, the detached mind is sharp, focused, and immune to provocation. Consider the psychological depth of this. Toxic people want you reactive because reaction is predictable, and predictability is controllable. But when you train yourself to detach, you become unpredictable. You deprive them of their strategy. You deny them the satisfaction of control. Suddenly, their words lose sharpness, their anger loses grip, their manipulation collapses. They cannot play a game in which you refuse to participate. The greatest benefit of detachment is freedom. Freedom from unnecessary suffering. Freedom from the endless cycle of drama. Freedom from wasting your energy on those who drain it. By mastering your emotional response, you elevate yourself above the petty and the poisonous, standing firmly in your own center. You become unshakable, not because the world has changed, but because you have changed your relationship with it. And so I leave you with this thought: your greatest defense against toxic people is not louder words, sharper comebacks, or endless arguments. It is your refusal to be moved by them. Detachment is strength disguised as calmness, power disguised as silence. Master your response, and you will master your future. One of the most exhausting traps people fall into is the belief that they can control everything. They spend their energy trying to change the opinions of others, to bend outcomes to their will, to force the world into their vision of how it should be. But life, in its wisdom, does not bend so easily. The Stoics understood this with piercing clarity. The boundary between what you can control and what you cannot is the very line that separates peace from misery. When you ignore that line, frustration consumes you. When you honor it, freedom begins. Think for a moment of the energy you have spent arguing with someone who never intended to understand you, worrying over a situation you could not alter, or replaying in your mind words already spoken and moments already past. All of that energy, hours, days, perhaps years, poured into what was never yours to command. The great irony is that while you chase control over the uncontrollable, you neglect the one domain that is fully yours: your mind, your choices, your actions. Psychologically, this is a profound shift. When you decide firmly and without hesitation to release what you cannot control, you reclaim the power to act where it matters. You stop wasting strength wrestling with shadows and instead build strength where you stand. The toxic person may still gossip, the critic may still sneer, the jealous may still plot, but your attention is no longer shackled to them. Their behavior is outside your circle of command. Your response to their behavior, however, lies squarely inside it, and that distinction changes everything. Consider how liberating it is to accept that some storms will rage no matter what you do. The winds will howl, the rain will pour, and the sky will darken. But you cannot silence the storm by shouting back at it. You can only control your shelter, your preparations, your attitude as the storm passes. Life works the same way. You cannot silence every critic, prevent every betrayal, or eliminate every injustice. But you can decide how you will meet them: with dignity or with despair, with composure or with chaos. That choice is always yours. Releasing what you cannot control is not surrender, it is strategy. It is the deliberate act of no longer investing your energy in futile battles. This is how you conserve strength for the victories that matter. The toxic person wants you distracted, emotionally entangled in their game. But once you understand the limits of your control, you no longer waste effort chasing them down. Every corridor of conflict, you remain anchored in your sphere of influence, and that anchor keeps you steady, while others are tossed about by every wave. To live this way requires humility, because it means acknowledging that much of life is beyond you. But humility is not weakness. Humility is the wisdom to recognize the limits of your power so that you can wield that power with precision. When you release what you cannot change, you sharpen your focus on what you can. And that is where transformation occurs. Imagine the psychological freedom of no longer needing everyone's approval, no longer needing to fix every misunderstanding, no longer needing to control every outcome. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. Instead, you concentrate your willpower on your character, your discipline, your vision, your response. The noise of the world fades, and in its place emerges a profound sense of clarity. So let me put it plainly. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. You cannot command the tide, but you can choose how to steer. You cannot dictate the behavior of others, but you can always govern yourself. And in that choice lies the essence of true power. The moment you stop clinging to what was never yours, you discover the strength of what has always been yours. Release the illusion of control. Embrace the reality of it, and you will find that no toxic person, no storm, and no setback can shake the calm center you have built within. There is a certain kind of power that does not shout, argue, or defend itself. It is not noisy. It does not scramble for attention, and yet it unsettles those who seek to provoke you. That power is silence in a world where every toxic person thrives on reaction, on pulling you into their drama, on feeding from your emotional energy. Silence is one of the strongest boundaries you can set. It is the refusal to play the game. Most people believe they weaken their position by not responding. They believe that silence equals surrender. But in truth, silence is often the loudest response you can give. It communicates something deeper than words: that you are not moved, not disturbed, and not willing to waste your energy where it bears no fruit. When you remain silent in the face of provocation, you deny the toxic person their nourishment. You strip them of the reaction they crave, and what is left for them is their own emptiness. Psychologically, silence is a tool of discipline. It forces you to govern your impulse, to lash out, to defend yourself, to prove your point. It demands self-mastery, because silence is not simply the absence of words, it is the presence of restraint. And restraint is the mark of strength. Any person can argue, any person can shout back, but it takes a person of substance to sit with attention, to let the other exhaust themselves while you remain unshaken. Think of how many arguments have escalated not because of what was originally said, but because of the endless back and forth that followed. Every word added fuel to the fire, until both parties were burned. Silence, when chosen wisely, removes the fuel. It does not let the fire grow. And in time, most fires burn out on their own. This is not weakness, this is wisdom. It is the art of conserving your energy for battles worthy of your time and focus. Toxic individuals will test this boundary relentlessly. They will poke, prod, and push, hoping to get under your skin. They will mistake your silence for confusion, for fear, or for lack of courage. But you know better. Your silence is not fear, it is control. You are not being silent because you lack a response. You are silent because you have already won. By refusing to enter the arena where they hold the advantage, you have chosen to stay rooted in your calm while they flail in chaos. This choice has another benefit. Silence creates space. It gives you time to evaluate whether a response is even necessary. It prevents you from being dragged into words you might regret, or decisions made in anger. Silence slows the moment down, and in that pause, clarity often emerges. You see the situation for what it is, and you can decide whether it deserves your voice or whether your silence has already spoken loudly enough. It is important to remember, however, that silence is not passivity. It is not about shrinking away from life. It is about consciously deciding when speech adds value and when it does not. It is about recognizing that your voice is a currency, and not every exchange deserves your investment. To spend words where they achieve nothing is to squander energy. To hold your silence until the moment is right is to multiply its impact. History is filled with examples of men and women who wielded silence with greater force than an army of words. Their restraint revealed an inner command, an unshakable confidence that did not require noise to be felt. That is the posture you must adopt. When you engage, let it be intentional. When you remain silent, let it be purposeful. Both are expressions of strength, but silence, when chosen wisely, often carries the greater weight. So when you are faced with the manipulator, the gossip, the one who seeks to bait you into a war of words, remember this: you do not owe the world your constant response. Your silence is your shield, your silence is your strategy, your silence is your boundary. And sometimes the most powerful statement you will ever make is the one you never speak. One of the most dangerous prisons a man can live in is the invisible cell of external approval. Many people go through life shackled to the opinions of others, building their decisions, their identities, aid and David their destinies on the unstable foundation of applause and acceptance. They chase recognition, they fear disapproval, and they measure their worth by how loudly the crowd cheers. But the truth is this: a person who depends on the approval of others is never free. They live as a puppet, pulled by invisible strings, their happiness rising and falling with the shifting moods of the world. To live a life of strength and purpose, you must anchor yourself to inner principles that do not bend with the winds of opinion. Principles are not about convenience, nor are they subject to popularity. They are the deep truths you have tested, the values you have chosen, and the standards you refuse to compromise. Even when the crowd demands otherwise, a person who stands on the principle may walk alone at times, but they walk with clarity, with dignity, and with power. Think of how fragile external approval really is today. The crowd may praise you, tomorrow they may curse you. Today they may lift you up, tomorrow they may tear you down. If your sense of identity is tied to their approval, then you will rise and fall like a leaf in the storm, never knowing stability. But when your compass points inward, when your actions are guided by what is right rather than what is popular, then you cannot be manipulated, you cannot be bribed with flattery, and you cannot be broken by criticism. You become immovable. This principle requires courage, because human nature craves acceptance. We are social beings, and to be rejected feels like death to the ego. That is why so many surrender their power to the judgment of others, cannot bear the sting of disapproval. But here is the paradox: the very moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you begin to command respect. The world respects those who live by their own code. even if it resists them at first. In the long run, the person who bends to every voice is forgotten, while the one who stands firm becomes unforgettable. Living by inner principles also protects your peace. Without them, you will constantly be torn between conflicting expectations. One person demands you act this way, another insists you act that way. You stretch yourself thin trying to satisfy everyone, and in the end, you satisfy no one, not even yourself. But principles simplify life. They act as filters, stripping away the noise. You no longer ask, "What will they think?" Instead, you ask, "What aligns with the truth I know to be right?" That single shift frees you from endless anxiety. There will be costs. Yes, people may misunderstand you, criticize you, or walk away. But if you surrender your principles for the sake of being liked, you will lose something far greater: your self respect. No amount of applause can fill the void it leaves behind. The world may not always reward you for living by principle, but your own soul will. And in the end, it is not the world you must live with, it is yourself. History again reminds us of this truth. The greatest leaders, inventors, and thinkers were often ridiculed, mocked, and rejected in their time because they refused to conform. Yet it was their refusal that paved the way for progress. They were not ruled by opinion. They were ruled by principle, and because of that, they left a mark that no critic could erase. So let me leave you with this thought. If you wish to rise above the crowd, you cannot live chained to its approval. Let your life be built on the rock of principles, not the shifting sands of praise. Speak when it is right, remain silent when it is wise, and act not for recognition but for truth. For when the applause fades and the critics fall silent, it is your principles that will remain, and they will be the measure of the life you truly lived.